Brothers and sisters, elders who remember the long nights of struggle and the bright mornings of hope, and young people whose hands are already shaping the next chapter tonight. We gather not to worship personalities, but to weigh principles. There is a question moving from village squares to city roundabouts, from classrooms to barracks, from markets to ministries. Are we witnessing the return of a familiar spirit in a different era? The name that rises again and again is Sankara, spoken with reverence, argued with passion, carried as a standard by those who believe dignity can be a daily practice and not an occasional performance. If a new moment claims kinship with that spirit, then we must test the claim with clarity, courage, and calm. Not with nostalgia but with evaluation, not with slogans but with evidence, and we must do so as citizens who know that the past is not a museum, it is a toolbox. The first echo we hear is the audacity of sovereignty. In another age, Sankara said plainly that a nation's path cannot be rented from creditors or choreographed by distant capitals. Sovereignty, for him, was not a thunderous word reserved for parades. It was a method of budgeting, a habit of mind, a discipline of saying yes to cooperation and no to control. To invoke that spirit today is to insist that development plans begin with local priorities, local producers, and local accountability. It is to examine every memorandum of understanding and ask, does this grow our capacity or merely grow our dependence? It is to welcome the world while refusing to be remade in its image. Sovereignty is not a fist, it is a backbone, and the test is simple. When the winds of geopolitics shift, do our clinics stay stocked, our teachers stay paid, and our roads stay maintained? If the answer is yes, then sovereignty has substance. The second echo is moral austerity in leadership. Sankara cut the pomp down to the plank, rode on two wheels when others demanded motorcades, slashed indulgent budgets, and demanded that public servants be servants first and public second. The ritual was not to humiliate office, but to honor the taxpayer. To take that name on the lips today is to shorten convoys, to publish perks, to cap allowances, to sell the redundant cars gathering dust in state garages, and to redirect those funds into primary health, safe water, and school feeding. It is to wear a suit or a uniform without wearing arrogance. It is to remember that the most convincing anti-corruption speech is a budget line that shows money moved from champagne to chalk. The third echo is the centering of the countryside. Sankara spoke in the grammar of farmers, terracing, composting, tree planting, seed sovereignty, safe storage, fair transport. He revered the calloused hand and the stubborn resolve that keeps planting when the rains tease and delay. Today, to breathe that spirit is to prioritize farm-to-market roads over vanity highways, to finance irrigation before international conferences, to fund soil health before public relations, and to treat the farmer as a client whose satisfaction determines the health of the entire economy. It is to ensure that when cotton or sorghum or maize leaves the village, a fair portion of the value remains behind in savings, services, and opportunities. The fourth echo is the centrality of women. Sankara did not file women's emancipation under miscellaneous. He paired revolution with liberation, insisted on maternity protections, attacked violence and forced marriage, and raised the visibility of women in public life. To repeat his name now is to make budgets feminist, in practice, not in copywriting, to secure land titles for the women who till the land, to ensure girls finish school, to pursue justice without delay or favoritism when abuse is reported, and to promote women to command posts in administration, industry, and the security services. A nation that keeps half its genius in the waiting room never reaches its appointment with history. The fifth echo is truth-telling to power, everywhere and always. Sankara did not varnish. He named dependency, denounced hypocrisy, and spoke across the table as if citizens were listening, in fact, because they were. To channel that ethic today is to call corruption by its name, even when the corrupt wear our colors, to cancel contracts that smell like smoke even if they were negotiated by friends, and to publish the beneficial owners of companies that want public money. It is to tell partners that cooperation requires respect, and to tell citizens that taxes are the price of civilization, not a private donation to be negotiated on the street with a wink. The sixth echo is practical self-reliance. Sankara elevated local production not to shut the door to the world, but to open the workshop window. He favored the bicycle, the local cloth, the repaired machine, the creative use of what was at hand. The modern translation is not isolation, it is industrial strategy with a conscience, add value at home, assemble what we can, forge regional value chains, and negotiate technology transfers that train our people rather than tether them to permanent import bills. It is to count success in kilowatts installed, hectares irrigated, kilometers maintained, technicians certified, adolescent girls retained in school, and maternal deaths averted. Patriotism measured in metrics is immune to propaganda. The seventh echo is youth as authors, not audience. Sankara mobilized young people for literacy, reforestation, public works, and civic education. He turned the impatience of youth into productivity rather than letting it fester into despair. To honor that practice now is to build a national service that teaches skills with a job at the end of the syllabus, to link apprenticeships to real factories, labs, and clinics, to fund startups that solve local problems, and to invite youth into policy design so programs fit realities rather than fantasies. When youth build bridges, literal and figurative, they stop looking for exits. The eighth echo is a security doctrine grounded in human dignity. Sankara insisted that the meaning of security is clean water, accessible clinics, decent schools, and roads that carry farm goods without fear, not merely the spectacle of arms. He demanded professionalism in the ranks, respect for civilians, and discipline that protected rather than preyed. In the present, that spirit looks like regular pay for security forces, training in law and de-escalation, independent oversight to investigate abuse, and a clear distinction between the exceptional authorities of war and the ordinary rights of the citizen. When security earns trust, insurgency loses oxygen. The ninth echo is Pan-Africanism, converted from poetry to policy. Sankara saw the continent as a common project, trade among neighbors, refuse manipulation by great powers, and stand in solidarity with struggles for freedom. Today, the prose of Pan-Africanism is harmonized customs, interoperable payment systems, cross-border rail, shared power pools, mutual recognition of professional qualifications, and regional courts with teeth. Borders can be lines on a map, or seams that stitch economies together. The choice is administrative, not metaphysical. The 10th echo is faith in the people as co-authors of change. Sankara believed that citizens, when told the truth and invited to labor for the common good, will walk farther for justice than elites will run for privilege. He tested that belief in public mobilizations, civic education, and the relentless insistence that democracy is a daily discipline. To revive that conviction now is to open budgets to scrutiny, to hold town halls that produce minutes and actions rather than selfies, to publish dashboards showing progress and delays, and to create grievance mechanisms that deliver remedies without bribes or years of waiting. Yet, if we stop at echoes, we risk mistaking a song for a system. The spirit we admire must be installed in institutions. That is where the rhetoric of integrity becomes procurement reform, where appeals to sovereignty become domestic supply chains, where support for women becomes enforceable law, where praise of youth becomes payroll for mentors and apprentices, where vows of security become oversight with consequences, and where Pan-African ideals become interoperable databases and synchronized regulations. The standard is not the heat of the speech, it is the cool compliance of a Tuesday afternoon when the minister is out of town and the system still functions. Let us then move from echoes to engineering. Begin with money. Publish every major contract, list every beneficial owner, and enforce conflict of interest rules with no exceptions. Audit independently and often. Digitize payments to reduce leakages. Let citizens track projects in real time. Boreholes drilled, kilometers rehabilitated, clinics supplied. Where a contract is breached, invoke penalties. Where a public servant is honest, reward visibly. The quickest way to make Sankara a living reference is to ensure that public money buys public value. Consider the countryside. Build feeder roads before announcing glamorous highways. Fund agricultural research so new seed varieties are adapted to local soils and weather. Provide soil testing and extension services that respect traditional knowledge while introducing proven improvements. Support cooperatives with training and governance and access to warehouse receipt financing. Insure farmers against weather shocks, so one bad season does not become a generational slide into poverty. If the rural majority prospers, the nation's political stability and fiscal health follow. Make women's leadership concrete. Dedicate budget lines for maternal health, childcare, and legal aid for survivors of violence. Guarantee a fair share of public contracts to women-owned firms that meet quality standards. Secure women's land rights through titling and community agreements. Train police and prosecutors to handle gender-based crimes with urgency and respect. Appoint women to strategic posts and expect from them what you expect from men. Results, integrity, and courage. The mother of a nation is not a metaphor. She is an engineer, a surgeon, a captain, a coder. On youth, design a ladder, not a slogan. National service should be an on-ramp to employment. 6 to 12 months of structured work in health, education, agriculture, infrastructure, or tech, tied to recognized credentials and guaranteed interviews with partner employers. Fund maker spaces and agri-tech incubators. Expand technical colleges with curricula built by industry. Pay stipends on time. Evaluate programs publicly. If you want youth to defend the nation, give them something worth defending that they help to build. Security must be seen to serve. Pay salaries reliably and transparently. Rotate units to prevent predatory relationships. Protect whistleblowers, whether they wear boots or suits. Establish civilian complaint boards with power to refer cases for prosecution. Train in human rights and community relations. Equip lawfully and maintain equipment carefully. Publish rules of engagement that prioritize the protection of life. When the uniform becomes synonymous with fairness, the uniform becomes welcomed. Pan-Africanism must appear on receipts. Negotiate mutual recognition of standards so goods cross borders without dying in warehouses. Coordinate energy investments across national lines, hydro in one, solar and wind in another, gas where available, connected by grids that respect ecology and economics. Use regional procurement to lower the cost of textbooks, vaccines, and lab equipment. Plan rail and road corridors that serve value chains, not vanity. Create regional scholarships that place students in the best institutions regardless of passport. Build courts and commissions that deliver judgments and make them stick. Unity should pay dividends that people can withdraw in better prices, shorter travel times, and shared prosperity. And in all of this, communicate like citizens are adults. Share the constraints, not just the achievements. Explain trade-offs honestly. Raise a tax if you must, but show where it goes and when the burden will ease. Announce targets with deadlines and publish the misses as well as the hits. Ask for volunteer expertise, hire competence, fire incompetence. The most radical act in politics is to tell the truth and survive. The path to surviving truth is performance. There is also a stern warning in the legacy we admire. The dangers are familiar, the seduction of charisma, the temptations of centralization, the rebranding of necessary discipline as personal authority. The line between urgency and impatience can blur. The uniform's clarity can spill into civilian life like oil on water, coating everything in command. To honor Sankara is to respect constitutions, term limits, independent courts, and free media. It is to build mechanisms that correct leaders without destroying them, and that remove leaders without destroying the country. It is to accept scrutiny as medicine, not as poison. And let us speak clearly about economics. Sovereignty without solvency is a slogan on credit. Balance ambition with arithmetic. A nation's freedom grows when its import bill shrinks for essentials it can produce or procure regionally. It grows when export earnings diversify beyond raw commodities. It grows when public debt finances assets that earn or liberate value, power plants that actually deliver, irrigation that lifts yields, logistics that cut costs, schools that produce competent graduates. Each project must pass 3 tests. Does it improve lives within a political cycle? Does it improve systems beyond a political cycle? And does it survive without permanent foreign subsidy? If the answer to all 3 is yes, you are traveling with Sankara's compass. Citizens, do not outsource virtue to leaders. The spirit you seek must be mirrored in daily acts. Refuse the small bribe. Arrive on time. Keep public spaces clean. Challenge rumors. Read budgets. Attend community meetings. And vote as if the ballot is a contract, not a cheer. Demand results without demanding miracles. Be patient without being passive. Be critical without being cynical. Build a culture where the question, "What have you delivered?" is not aggression but affection for the common good. Those who claim the name of Sankara inherit a debt. The debt is to results. Clinics must hum with power and medicine. Classrooms must hum with teachers and learning. Markets must hum with fair prices and safe passage. Courts must hum with independence. Factories must hum with honest payrolls. Farms must hum with irrigation and storage. If the hum grows steadier each month, then the claim stands. If the hum is replaced by speeches, then the claim fails, no matter how lyrical the phrases. Do not fear that invoking a hero traps us in yesterday. Memory is not a cage, it is a guide. The world has changed. The internet accelerates rumor and solidarity alike. Global finance moves faster than ministries can type. Climate stress pushes farmers into cities and tempers into fire. The response, to be faithful to Sankara, must be more technical, more transparent, more scalable. Build data systems that track every school desk, every vaccine, every kilometer. Use open source platforms to let citizens audit progress. Train a civilian service that is elite in competence and humble in posture. Pull the diaspora back into service with projects, not platitudes. Across the continent, friends are watching. They know the story. A leader claims a legacy. A people cheer. The old elite smile patiently, confident that nothing truly changes. Break that pattern. Deliver boring things brilliantly. Let fuel queues shrink and stay shrunk. Let procurement move from discretion to criteria. Let border posts clear goods in hours, not days. Let human rights be defended not only in speeches, but in courtrooms where the weak can win against the strong. Then the smile of the old elites will stiffen into respect, and the cheer of the people will mature into trust. Trust is the true currency of sovereignty. It is minted slowly and spent quickly. Protect it. When a project falters, say so. When a deadline is missed, reset it publicly, with reasons and remedies. When a scandal erupts, investigate independently and publish the findings. When success is real, celebrate modestly and move on to the next task. The state is not a stage, it is a workshop. In every workshop there is a master craftsperson, but there are also apprentices who will one day carry the craft forward. Prepare the succession of values, train your successors while you still have time, institutionalize what works in law and routine, so that good practice outlives any one pair of hands. The best tribute to Sankara is not to freeze his image, it is to perpetuate his method: clarity about ends, frugality about means, courage about truth, solidarity about scale, and relentless measurement about progress. And to those who fear that independence invites punishment from abroad, remember, the remedy for pressure is preparation. Diversify markets, build regional alliances that trade more among neighbors than with distant patrons. Invest in food security, power reliability, and health systems resilient to shocks. Creditors respect countries that can say no because they can feed their people, power their clinics, and defend their borders. Partners respect countries that keep their word because their systems are consistent, regardless of who sits where. If tonight we speak the name of Sankara, let it be as a mirror, not a mask. The mirror shows us whether our daily governance honors the poor with competence, honors the taxpayer with thrift, honors women with equal power, honors youth with opportunities, honors security with restraint, honors neighbors with cooperation, honors truth with transparency, and honors the future with sustainability. The mask, by contrast, would merely disguise old habits with new slogans. Tear off the mask, polish the mirror. I close with a simple standard you can recite to yourself tomorrow morning and every morning after. When a policy is proposed, ask, does it enlarge the circle of dignity? When a budget is drafted, ask, does it move money from appearances to essentials? When an agreement is signed, ask, does it grow our capacity? When a leader is praised, ask, do the numbers agree? When a critic speaks, ask, are we listening for the grain of truth that could improve our work? When the world knocks, ask, can we meet it standing? If the answers trend toward yes, then the spirit we admire is not a ghost, it is a guide walking beside us. If not, then the most revolutionary act is to change course before failure becomes fate. The name we revere deserves that honesty. Sankara's gift was to make the extraordinary sound like common sense and to demand that common sense become common practice. Let us accept the gift by building a republic where integrity is routine, service is expected, and results are visible. Same spirit, different era. Let the difference be this: that we completed the work, that the clinics stayed stocked after the speeches ended, that the roads were maintained after the cameras left, that the girls' schools stayed full after the ribbon was cut, that the budgets were audited after the applause died down, that citizens remained sovereign after the day's pageantry. Then the echoes will no longer be echoes. They will be our everyday music, scored to the rhythm of dignity, played by millions of hands that know exactly what they are building and exactly who they are becoming. Revolutionary spirit of self-reliance. Sankara championed dignity, independence, and breaking free from foreign dependency. His spirit of rely on what we have, build with our own hands, continues to echo today in leaders who resist external control. Fearless stand against imperialism. Sankara openly confronted neo-colonial structures and foreign exploitation. His boldness inspired Africans to reclaim ownership of their resources and sovereignty, a message still alive in the current struggles. People-centered governance. Sankara prioritized the well-being of ordinary citizens, from health campaigns to education reforms. He showed that true leadership means putting the people first, and that legacy still inspires governance today. Military in service of the people. Sankara redefined the military not as a tool of oppression, but as protectors of the people, engaged in building infrastructure, agriculture, and social projects. That model remains a powerful vision of people's armies. Unyielding courage and sacrifice. Sankara paid the ultimate price for his ideals, becoming a timeless symbol of courage and sacrifice. His story teaches that the struggle for justice and dignity may demand everything, but it also plants seeds for generations to come. Would you like me to expand each of these 5 points into 400-word speeches, like we've been doing before, so you'll have a full set ready? My friends, the revolutionary spirit of self-reliance is not a slogan to be waved on banners. It is a muscle to be exercised daily. Sankara taught that dignity begins at the point where a people refuse to be forever purchasers of their own poverty. Self-reliance means turning local capacity into national capability, repairing what we have, adapting what we import, and building things with our own hands so that skills and wealth remain at home. It rejects the false choice between isolation and servitude. Instead, it insists on strategic engagement where partnerships transfer know-how, not dependence. Practically, self-reliance reshapes priorities. It channels public funds into factories that assemble and maintain equipment, into agricultural research that breeds seed for our soils and climate, and into vocational schools that certify technicians who can keep machines running long after foreign teams have left. It means designing procurement rules that favor local suppliers who meet standards and offering incubation support so startups can scale. These are not romantic gestures, they are fiscal strategy. Every dollar kept in the local economy multiplies through wages, taxes, and reinvestment. Self-reliance is also cultural. It restores pride in local craftsmanship and discourages the habit of equating foreign with better. That cultural shift creates demand for homegrown goods and rewards entrepreneurs who innovate under local conditions. It calls for curricula that value practical skills as much as theory, and for apprenticeships that place young people inside workshops and plants rather than at the end of long job queues. When skills are local, maintenance is faster, downtime is shorter, and sovereignty is deeper. We must pair ambition with realism. Not every component can be produced overnight. Sensible import substitution targets sectors where we can be competitive quickly and build domestic capacity progressively for others. Use standards and audits to ensure quality. Don't protect industries with subsidies that never graduate them to competitiveness. Blend public support with private responsibility. Grants for capacity building, matched by performance milestones and independent verification. Finally, self-reliance is ethical. It demands that benefits be broad. Local content requirements tied to real training quotas, community clauses that create jobs near projects, and transparent contracts so citizens can see how public money creates public value. It resists the allure of quick headlines and demands the slower work of institution building. If we make self-reliance a discipline rather than a phrase, we transform dependency into dignity. Sankara's example was not simply to declaim independence, but to show how to live it through frugality, local production, and relentless training. Let us take that lesson and turn it into policy, practice, and pride, so that our prosperity is not a borrowed echo but a homegrown chorus. My friends, a fearless stand against imperialism is not theatrical bravado, it is the sober courage to protect our dignity, our resources, and our right to decide. Sankara taught us that independence is more than a diplomatic ceremony. It is a daily defense of the people's interests against subtle and not so subtle forms of external domination. Imperialism today rarely arrives wrapped in the same flags. It takes the shape of unequal contracts, conditional aid, opaque loans, land grabs, and the extraction of wealth with little benefit left behind. To stand fearlessly is to name these practices, confront them with law and strategy, and refuse to accept dependence as destiny. First, this stand requires clarity of purpose. We must distinguish partners from patrons. Partnerships are reciprocal. Patronage is asymmetric. When an agreement transfers technology, builds skills, and creates local value chains, it is a partnership. When it leaves us with debt, depleted resources, and few jobs, it is a form of control. Sankara called for the courage to say no to deals that bind freedom. That courage remains necessary. To walk away from contracts that hollow out our capacity, to demand transparency in every memorandum, to insist on local content and measurable knowledge transfer. Second, economic policy is central to resistance. Replace extractive terms with industrial strategy, insist on processing at home, require training milestones, and build procurement rules that favor firms who hire and train locals. Diversify markets so we are not hostage to a single buyer. Use regional blocks to aggregate demand and secure better prices. Build sovereign funds and stabilization buffers so shocks abroad do not become crises at home. These are not mere economic concepts, they are shields for sovereignty. Third, legal and diplomatic instruments matter. Insist on publicly published contracts, independent audits, and international arbitration clauses that do not strip our courts of jurisdiction. Engage regional courts and multilateral bodies when rights are trampled. Build alliances with states and institutions that respect reciprocity and abide by rules, not with actors who trade influence for access. Fourth, mobilize people power and civil society. A nation that tolerates secret deals is vulnerable. A nation whose people demand accountability is resilient. Protect journalists, support investigative NGOs, and create civic platforms where citizens can scrutinize foreign agreements in real time. When the public knows, bad deals become harder to conceal. Fifth, craft a diplomatic posture that balances firmness with openness. Stand tall on principles, resource sovereignty, labor rights, environmental protection, while welcoming technology and fair investment. Use our leverage. Stable markets, strategic minerals, and regional corridors are bargaining chips if we use them wisely. Finally, remember that anti-imperialism is not hostility to the world, it is love of self-rule. It is building capacity so we can choose partners from strength, not necessity. Sankara's lesson was simple and demanding. Dignity is non-negotiable, and the work of independence is continuous. Let us take up that work with clear eyes, steady hands, and the moral courage to say what must be said and do what must be done. My friends, people-centered governance is not a slogan to be printed on posters. It is a practice that turns power into service and laws into daily life. At its heart is a simple promise: the state exists to make people safer, healthier, and more able to pursue their dignity. That promise becomes real when decisions are transparent, when voices are heard, and when public resources buy public value rather than private gain. Begin with listening. Policy must start not in distant offices, but in village halls, market squares, and school committees. Regular town hall sessions, citizen juries, and participatory budgeting put local priorities on the table and force planners to answer real needs. When parents help design school timetables, attendance rises. When farmers shape irrigation projects, adoption and maintenance improve. Listening prevents wasted projects and builds ownership. Next, Decentralize with responsibility. Local governments should hold the purse strings for services they manage and be accountable for results. Decentralization must be paired with capacity building, training municipal managers, equipping clinics, and digitizing records so local actors can deliver and be judged by outcomes. Responsibility without resources is a promise broken. Resources without accountability are a license to idle. Transparency is the oxygen of trust. Publish contracts, procurement decisions, and project dashboards in clear language and local dialects. Digitize payments so salaries and supplier invoices can be tracked. Open data portals let citizens check whether promised boreholes were drilled or classrooms furnished. Where problems appear, public scrutiny accelerates correction. Accountability mechanisms must be swift and fair. Independent auditors, empowered ombuds, offices, and protected whistleblower channels deter theft and reward integrity. Courts and anti-corruption bodies need legal teeth and budgetary independence, but accountability must also be procedural. Timely grievance redress, mobile complaint units, and community monitoring boards that can pause projects until violations are remedied. Center inclusion, women, youth, the disabled, and marginalized regions, by design. Set hiring and training quotas, guarantee seats on oversight boards, and fund targeted scholarships and microcredit. Inclusion is not charity, it expands the talent pool and stabilizes development by making benefits visible across society. Measure what matters, choose indicators that reflect lives changed, clinic uptime, percentage of children in school, days of electricity per month, time to register a business, publish results monthly, reward ministries and municipalities that meet targets and correct those that do not. Finally, cultivate a civil service ethic, merit-based hiring, competitive pay, continuous training, and the celebration of honest public servants. Leadership must model restraint, shorter convoys, published expense reports, and clear performance targets so citizens see service, not spectacle. People-centered governance turns citizens from passive recipients into active partners. It makes the state more efficient, the social contract stronger, and democracy more than a vote once every few years. Let us insist on government that listens, acts, and answers every day in every village, for every family. My friends, a military that truly serves the people is not one that stands above society, but one that stands with it, disciplined, professional, and firmly subordinated to the rule of law. When soldiers see themselves as guardians of the common good, rather than gatekeepers of privilege, security becomes a public service that protects lives, livelihoods, and the fragile trust that holds a nation together. Begin with clear civilian control and constitutional limits. The security forces must operate under laws set by elected representatives and ordinary courts, not personal directives or opaque orders. That framework protects both citizens and soldiers. It gives commanders clarity of mission and gives citizens channels to contest abuse. Respect for human rights, transparent rules of engagement, and swift independent investigation of alleged violations are non-negotiable. When justice applies equally, trust follows. Professionalism matters. Training should emphasize not only marksmanship and tactics, but also law, human rights, community relations, and disaster response. Invest in career pathways that reward competence, technical certifications, leadership courses, and exchange programs with reputable military academies. Reliable pay, decent housing, and family support reduce the incentives for predation and increase morale. A well-treated soldier is less likely to prey on civilians and more likely to protect them. Embed the military in development, not as an occupying force, but as a partner. Engineer units can rehabilitate roads, medical corps can support remote clinics, and logistics teams can help with emergency food distribution. These roles must be time-bound, transparent, and overseen by civilian agencies so that aid does not become a pretext for political influence. When the uniformed services build bridges and wells, they also build public esteem. Rotate deployments and prevent the formation of predatory relationships. Long, static postings in the same community can create dependency or abuse. Regular rotation combined with community oversight committees limits opportunities for exploitation and creates predictable, accountable relations. Protect whistleblowers and investigators who expose wrongdoing within the ranks. Internal accountability must be real. An independent inspectorate with prosecutorial referral power, regular audits of procurement, and public reporting on disciplinary outcomes. Sanctions for corruption or abuse should be swift and visible to deter others. Support veterans and their families, reintegration programs, mental health services, and vocational training honor service, and prevent marginalization that can fuel instability. A society that cares for those who served reaffirms the social contract and discourages cycles of grievance. Finally, keep the military apolitical. Barracks are not platforms for partisan ambition. Officers and enlisted personnel must pledge allegiance to the Constitution and to civilian institutions, not to transient leaders. Political disputes must be settled in the ballot box, in courts, and in parliaments, not along parade grounds. When the armed forces are professional, accountable, and tied to service rather than privilege, security becomes an asset for development. Citizens sleep easier, markets function better, and democracy deepens. That is the military in service of the people, disciplined, respectful, and steadfast in its duty to protect life and liberty. My friends, courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. Sacrifice is not spectacle, but the quiet willingness to pay a cost for the common good. The legacy we honor teaches that unyielding courage and sincere sacrifice are the moral engines of change. They are not dramatic gestures for history books alone. They are daily commitments to speak truth when silence is cheaper, to keep working when applause has faded, and to put the nation's needs ahead of personal comfort. Courage begins in honesty. It is the unease that refuses to let corruption be called tradition, the voice that exposes a bad contract even when friends benefit, the official who refuses a bribe and loses the immediate gain but preserves a public trust worth far more. Such acts are often small and unseen: a clerk who reports abuse, a teacher who refuses to falsify attendance, a manager who fires a contractor for shoddy work. These quiet courages, multiplied, shift the moral weather of a country. Sacrifice asks for disciplined restraint, leaders who accept lower perks, who shrink motorcades and invest the savings in clinics and schools, show that public service is a duty, not a privilege. Citizens who volunteer time to repair a school or mentor a youth create social capital that no headline can buy. Families who share scarce resources to send a child to vocational training plant the seeds of a stronger economy. Sacrifice is not martyrdom. It is investment, often anonymous, always necessary. Courage and sacrifice are also collective. When communities stand together to demand accountability, when markets close in peaceful protest against injustice, when civil society monitors contracts and protects whistleblowers, we see courage multiplied into movement. Collective sacrifice, short-term austerity to fund long-term infrastructure, temporary inconvenience to preserve ecological balance, becomes the strategic currency of national resilience. There is risk, and risk requires prudence. Courage without discipline can harden into recklessness. Sacrifice without reciprocity can become exploitation. That is why institutions must convert moral acts into routine practice. Laws that protect whistleblowers, budgets that reward performance, and accountability systems that make courage effective rather than merely brave. When the state recognizes sacrifice with fair returns, jobs, education, security, citizens are more likely to invest their courage again and again. Finally, remember why we ask for sacrifice, not to punish but to build. We ask people to forego comforts today, so children inherit schools that work, clinics that heal, and economies that sustain. We ask leaders to live simply so public funds go further. We ask communities to stand firm so the promise of dignity becomes real for every household. Unyielding courage and sacrifice are not the burden of a few heroes, they are the rhythm of a free people. Let us cultivate them with gratitude, protect them with law, and reward them with results. In that practice lies the power to transform momentary passion into lasting progress.